Today on Church Public, Hershey's Chocolate introduces a new spokesperson for International Women's Month, and of course, it's a man. Admiral Rachel Levine, also a man, talks about the dangers of nutrition regarding the LGBT community, and Dylan Mulvaney shows how great it is to put men back in the kitchen dressed as women or something. Meanwhile, Disney brings back woke Peter Pan, which will be interesting. The FBI is now apparently going after Christians, and even at Harvard, the number one school maybe in the country, maybe in the world, Harvard, students can't no longer read good and other not good things too. We'll talk about that story, among others. These are all real stories showing the real world so that we can learn how to live out our faith through current events from a Christian perspective. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. I am Matt Odegaard, your host as always, and I really appreciate you stopping by today. Audio listener, I really appreciate you. I really love you. And if you are enjoying this, I want you to hit the buttons, the like, the share, the subscribe, all the things. If, and this might be one, you want to see some of this in real life, the video for this, you can go to churchpublic.com/podcast and see the video for this. If you want to go to YouTube, it's probably going to be there, but I do try to get it at least from somewhere onto churchpublic.com. The first page will be audio and the second page will be video. Anyway, love to have you check that out if you want to see some of the pictures, because I don't know what to say, people, but on this one, the picture may be worth 1,000 words on some of these that we're going to look at today. So we're gonna look at some of those, and we just need to understand all the things that are going on in the world today. So that's what we try and do here. We try and look at current events from a Christian perspective, because I want to help you understand how to live out your faith. And in order to do that, you kind of have to understand the culture. I even had a conversation with a person the other day who said, I just kind of want to keep my head down. I don't really want to know what's going on because I just hope it'll all, go back to the way it was before. And I hate to tell you this, but the reality is, it's not going to go back to the way that it was before. It's just not going to. This is not the way the culture is going. I know we had the Asbury revival, and we talked about that a little bit. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on that, you can go back in the archives on the audio or the video podcast and look at some of the things that I had to say there, unless we have an actual revival that extends through a long time. We're not moving in a more moral direction, in a more Christian direction. That is just not the way this culture is going. So to say, hey, I just don't want to think about this, I just want to wait until it all gets better, I hate to burst the bubble. I really, really do. But that's not the way we're going. And I just want to equip you so that when you come into contact with these kinds of things, and you'll hear some of these stories, you'll go, that's extreme. I'm never going to interact with anything like this. The reason that I bring you these stories, whether you like it or not, you can not like me, you can shoot the messenger, that's fine. You can throw your phone and all your other devices out the window and go live on a ranch in Montana. But the reality is, no matter where you are in America, you're going to run into this ideology, this worldview that is in opposition to Christian worldview. This is going to happen to you, whether you have kids, whether you're at your work, whether you're at the grocery store, even in some of the churches that you're in. You're going to hit some of these ideas that have practical outcomes. They just do. And you're going to have to figure out, what are you going to do with that? I want to help you along in that path. I want to help you figure out what you do with that. How do you live that out in real life? So we're going to look at some of these, I don't know what else to say, weirder examples, because this helps illustrate how to live out your faith as a Christian, to live from a Christian perspective in a different way. So let's get to the news and just see where that takes us. So the first thing we're looking at today is Hershey. I'm going to tell you some personal things here. I had some family who lived near Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's a real place. If you didn't know that, real place. I've been to the Hershey factory before all this happened, but now we're in this place where apparently for the past couple of years, they have just celebrated Hershey, which is a different kind of thing. So we have the Hershey Bar, Hershey Month. So this Hershey is a different world where we're living in this situation that they're celebrating some different kinds of things. So I know I'm kind of beating around the bush, but here's what happened this year. So Hershey's chocolate is celebrating Women's History Month and I guess it's International Women's History Month. I don't know. So it's Women's History Month, and they're celebrating this through the Hershey Bar. It's what it sounds like. Hershey Bar. But where this gets, I guess, interesting is the Hershey Bar is promoted by a man. Here you go. So if you're an audio listener, you're not going to appreciate all that's happening in this picture. So I'm sorry, or you're welcome, depending on how you want to take this. So this is a picture of a person holding the Hershey Bar, and the spoiler here is that the picture and the person holding the Hershey Bar is, in fact, a man. Yep, that's what we're doing here. That's what we're working through. So I'm going to play for you just a clip of the video, the advertisement for the Hershey Bar. Let's take a look at this here.
My name is Faye Johnstone. I'm the Executive Director of Wisdom to Action. We can create a world where everyone is able to live in public space as their honest and authentic selves. See the women changing how we see the future at Hershey's Canada.
So there you go. The Hershey Bar is, again, if you were not watching, you may not realize the her/she in that video was, in fact, a man. Yeah. So here's just an article from the Daily Mail, a little bit on this. So Daily Mail says, Hershey's Canadian brand. Oh, I forgot to mention this is Canada. So thank you, Canada. Anyway, so Hershey's Canadian brand launched Her for She campaign in conjunction with International Women's Day. The ad features a trans woman and activist, Faye Johnstone, whom you just saw if you were watching, as one of the 5 faces of the campaign. This is the 3rd year that Hershey's has marketed a product to celebrate International Women's Day. According to a post from Hershey's Canada, the campaign will, quote, shine a light on the women and girls who inspire us every day, end quote. Unless the women and girls are, in fact, men. Okay, we'll just keep going. One more quote from this article. We still have a long way to go. Oh, this is a quote. Here, this is good. So this is a quote from Faye Johnstone, whom you just heard from and saw if you're watching, who said, quote, we still have a long way to go in the fight to end misogyny, patriarchy, gender-based violence. I hope this campaign helps give more young women and girls role models and possibly models and shows them how we can be a change to the world together, Johnstone tweeted. So again, if you're keeping score, this was a man dressed like a woman talking about chocolate bars. Anyway, that's the reality of where we are now. Now, I do have to add this part to the story because, oh my gosh, I do laugh out loud a lot. I do a lot. If you know me, I laugh out loud a lot, sometimes quite loudly. And so this isn't anything particularly abnormal. But when I saw this advertisement, I laughed so hard that all of my children came running and said, what in the world is going on? But anyway, I'm not going to play you this next ad. You can go and look it up if you want. I will say it's mildly not safe for children if you haven't talked about biology. I'm just going to leave it at that. But it's funny. Anyway, whatever. You can go watch it. So this is the Daily Wire, and the Daily Wire the Daily Wire saw this Hershey bar promoted by a he and said, "This is ridiculous." And so what they did is they created their own chocolate bar, and this is the chocolate bar that they created. So Jeremy Boring of Daily Wire has created Jeremy's chocolate, and he has created a she/her bar and a he/him bar, and there is a difference between them. And again, this is the part that isn't entirely safe for children if you haven't figured that one out. So there is a difference in between them. And again, you can go and watch that video if you want to. If you have a sense of humor, I think it's ridiculously funny. But anyway, so it's a troll, and yet at the same time, it is just reality. Like, let's have reality be reality, right? Speaking of reality, Rachel Levine, formerly Richard, it talks to us about nutrition. So going from chocolate to nutrition is a great segue here, I think, because chocolate is not necessarily nutritious, right? We all know that, unless it's dark chocolate, which is, of course, one of the best foods ever. Again, those that know me know I don't do a lot of dessert, which causes consternation to some of my family, but I do actually like dark chocolate because it's different than milk chocolate. Anyway, side story. So Rachel Levine is telling us about nutrition, and specifically, Rachel Levine, formerly Richard, is telling us about what nutrition and what nutrition problems the LGBTQ community has. Yes, that's what we're talking about. So let's watch a clip here, and then we'll talk about what is being said in this interview.
Hello, I am Admiral Rachel Levine, the Assistant Secretary for Health at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. March is National Nutrition Month, and the Biden-Harris administration is taking action to support public health by offering evidence-based guidance on nutrition. The 2025 to 2030 Federal Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee just met for the first time to begin its review of the relationship between diet and health throughout our lives. This committee will make recommendations for the new dietary guidelines for Americans based on a number of important factors, including socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, and culture. Each of these factors impacts the food that we eat, the food that we're able to access in our overall nutritional outlook. This work is very timely because our country is facing a genuine crisis of diet-related diseases.
So a couple things in this video. Again, so culture affects diet. I mean, I guess that's true. I like Mexican food, and it's different than American food or Italian food, but that's not what he's talking about here. And in fact, then he goes on to say that we are going into this dietary crisis, which is true. But throughout, you can go and watch the rest of this video if you want to. I just clipped a part of it, but he never says, like, he does talk about obesity a little bit, but he never says, like, well, it's that we eat too much, which causes you to be overweight, which causes health problems. I mean, we're talking about diet. We're talking about diet, and it is a what you eat kind of situation. I mean, it's not rocket science. Like, what you eat is what you eat. We all know that. I guess we can't say that, but we all know that. Well, let's watch the second part of this clip, and then I'll have some more things to say about that. So he goes on to say this.
Estimated healthcare costs associated with excess weight and obesity totaled nearly $173 billion in 2019. These burdens fall especially hard on communities of color, people living in rural areas and U.S. territories, and those living with disabilities. Older adults, the LGBTQI+ community, military families, and veterans.
So, again, if you didn't catch some of that, right, he's saying that there was a ton of money, 1.8 or 1.9 billion, I can't remember what he said, something like that, dollars spent on issues related to health. That's a problem, sure. But then goes on to list a bunch of people groups, including LGBT groups that are adversely affected by diet. Now, I'm just telling you, I'm going to have to see some numbers on this. What I was told, credibly, I thought that it is healthy to transition to an LGBTQAIP hashtag+ $ smiley face lifestyle. But now I'm being told that if you're in that lifestyle, you're at incredible risk of not being able to get the appropriate nutrition. Now, why? I have no idea. What does that have to do with the food that you choose to eat? I don't know. I'm gonna have to see some numbers on this. I don't understand that. I don't understand why being in the LGBT lifestyle is detrimental to the food that you eat. I've sat here for some time now and tried to think about, like, how does that affect what you eat and your diet? I can't get there. Anyway, I also think it is interesting to point out that or the question, I guess, is, so why is a middle-aged, overweight white guy who is dressed like a woman talking to us about how nutrition affects LGBTQ communities and diet-related diseases like being overweight? I mean, is there irony there? I'll just let you answer that question. But yeah, we'll move on from there. And get to the bigger point, right? The Christian worldview, the Christian perspective, because we need to get there. All of this is about destroying the system. It's about destroying the system. It's not about eating right. It's not about healthcare. It's about destroying the system. It's about showing you that if you think you're a woman, you're really not. If you pretend to be a woman, you really are. And you aren't what you eat. It's not, garbage in, garbage out. It's through programs, through government, we're going to transform you into something amazing. Unicorns, rainbows, I don't know. You will, through government, transform into something that you couldn't even imagine you could possibly be. It has no bearing on reality, and the whole goal is to destroy reality, to destroy norms, and to get you into something that is imaginary, even though it's imaginary. And that's really the thing. And I know that sounds like crazy, and it sounds like conspiracy, and it sounds like I'm just making things up. But this is the goal. It's clearly the goal. I mean, speaking about destroying reality, we have this next picture that I'm going to show you is Dylan Mulvaney. We've talked about Dylan Mulvaney a bunch of times. Dylan Mulvaney was famous for being on TikTok and deciding that he's going to show you how to live as a girl, right? So it's a guy who was a theater guy, and then all of a sudden he decided, I'm going to be a girl, and his series on TikTok is Day in the Life of a Girl. Day 1, day 7,000, whatever day he's on now. I don't really care about. But through that, and through the popularity gained in that, he was invited to the White House to advise the president on the value of being trans. And now Dylan Mulvaney is advertising for KitchenAid. So here's, again, if you are just watching, I will describe for you. This is a KitchenAid ad with Dylan Mulvaney, I guess dressed as a woman. Yeah. The ad is captivating. It said, KitchenAid USA color of the year is hibiscus, and it's inspiring me to conquer my fruit phobia. Hold on, I have to pause there. What is a fruit phobia? Okay, I'm out. Conquer my fruit phobia. You guys know I love bold pops of color, and hibiscus lets me bring that vibrancy into my kitchen every day. So I'm still stuck on fruit phobia. Like, you're afraid of fruit? We'll move on from there. Anyway, but here's the deal. This is another man who apparently is taking the place of women, now apparently taking the place of women in the kitchen by being a man. I don't know what to do with this. It is the only answer that I can come to is that they want to destroy reality. They want to destroy the norms, the traditions, the men, the women, the children, the family, the marriage. They just want to destroy it all, but not put anything back in its place. The thing that goes back in its place is do whatever you want, because it doesn't matter, because nothing matters. Like that's the feel that we get from all of this. And I have to say this point too, and I might be noticing a trend that doesn't exist, but this is what I'm noticing. And again, if you're not watching, you may not have even seen this, but I wonder if you're watching, if you see it too. We are supposed to, this is what I've been told, we are supposed to be lifting other voices up, celebrating people of color, etc. But it seems like all of the people, at least most of the people, this culture is putting forward as heroes are white guys that suddenly identify as girls, so that makes them really awesome again. Apparently, not only are the best women men, but the evil white male patriarchy that this person who was, I'll read this for you again. This is Johnstone about the Hershey Bar. We have a long way to go to fight the end to misogyny, patriarchy, and gender-based violence. But you're a white guy. You are the patriarchy. But now that you wear a dress, you're not the patriarchy? Like, it seems like the evil white male patriarchy, according to you, has secretly won. Now, of course, I don't buy this evil patriarchy game, but I think this illustrates the point that I've mentioned over and over again. There will be men in charge. You may not want to hear that, but it's just the reality of the world. Men are going to be in charge. The only question is going to be, will they be good men or will they be bad men? And it seems like this culture is choosing bad men. So, speaking of bad men, Peter Pan is coming back to theaters again, but of course, this time This time it's very intersectional because, well, progress. I mean, this is where we're at. So Peter Pan, but now it's Peter Pan and Wendy. Peter Pan is getting a woke reboot by Disney. Apparently Disney has no new creative ideas, and they just have to remake all of the old things because there is nothing new that they can figure out how to do. It's just the old things again, but redone in woke fashion. So we have Peter Pan and Wendy here, and there's lots of things going on in this new woke reboot. I'll talk about a couple, but the one that caught me the most was the Lost Boys. So so you have the Lost Boys, and this is in the trailer. Oh, and by the way, you can go watch the trailer. I can't play the trailer because I can't play the trailer because Disney gets really angry on all of the video sites if you play Disney clips. They find it immediately. Algorithms just like destroy you. So you're gonna have to go watch this for yourself. So I have some screen grabs of this Disney trailer where Wendy is coming up the hill and sees, I guess she's in Neverland, and so she sees the Lost Boys, and she goes, "Who are you?" They say, "We're Lost Boys." And Wendy says, this is the screen clip if you're just listening. Wendy says, "But you're not all boys." And then the two girls who are twins who are black say, "So?" and she goes, "Oh, okay." And listen, I don't care. I don't care if the Lost Boys are boys or girls. I mean, the mythology of Peter Pan is actually really dark. Disney made it really clean. If you read the book, Peter Pan by Barry, I think is the author, it's creepy and dark, and there's murder. Peter Pan might have been a murderer. I probably shouldn't have told you all of that backstory, but if you, again, read books, which we'll talk about in the Harvard segment in a few minutes, you'll note that Peter Pan's not actually great and might even be the villain. But that's beside the point. No one knows that. No one but me, who's a weird reader and knows ridiculous things, knows that. Everyone just remembers the cartoon Peter Pan, maybe even Hook later, that's all we know. And so to replace the Lost Boys with girls, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? Like, what goal, what value are you bringing? And that's like inclusion, I guess. And I don't care. I don't care what color you are. I don't care. That should be the point. I just want Disney to make an interesting movie. I don't want Disney to remake a movie or a fairy tale or a myth and replace the characters we know with different characters and call it the same story. Make a new story. Like, have some creativity. Apparently you do not have any more creativity, Disney, and that makes me sad. I would like Disney to have creativity. Disney at one point clearly had a ton of creativity and brought that to the screen in a family-friendly way, and now, as they've mentioned on their not-so-secret gay agenda, among other things, they hate you, and they don't want you to have any fun. They just want to promote their ideas and their agenda, and it's a bummer to me. I mean, like The Princess and the Frog with Tiana, that was a lovely little story, except for the crazy witchcraft part, which I always fast forward and I don't like, but side issue. And it doesn't matter to me what color the characters are. Like, we just should have good characters, but now they have to take characters and change them because that's all we can do, and that's a bummer for creativity. I want to see creativity. Like, I think it's important to have creativity. But speaking of creativity, apparently the FBI is now planting agents in churches in their creative attempts to find I don't know, Christians in the churches. I brought you a little piece of this story the other day, and we're not going to spend too much time on this, but it's still going on as a story, so we have to talk about it a little bit more, that the FBI has been apparently sent into Catholic churches. Now, as soon as that memo was released to the public, FBI officials came out and said, no, just kidding. We're not sending agents into the Catholic churches, because why would we send agents into the Catholic churches? Because what's wrong with Catholic churches except for Christians that are in there that believe things like men are men and women are women and marriage is between a man and a woman and all those, like traditional evil patriarchal things that we've been talking about earlier, I guess. I don't know, but the FBI has been sending people into Catholic churches. So here's what happens. You have Senator Mark Hawley, and he is interviewing he's interviewing, who's he interviewing? Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States. He's interviewing Merrick Garland, and he says, hey, we got this memo that you're sending FBI agents into Catholic churches for who knows what reason, except to spy on them and see if they're believing what the Bible says, I guess, about sexuality and immorality and all these other things. And so Hawley talks to Merrick Garland, Attorney General, and asks some questions about this. Let's listen to what Hawley asks.
The FBI field office in Richmond on the 23rd of January of this year issued a memorandum in which they advocated for, and I quote, the exploration of new avenues for tripwire and source development against traditionalist Catholics, it's their language, including those who favor the Latin Mass. Attorney General, are you cultivating sources and spies in Latin Mass parishes and other Catholic parishes around the country?
No, the Justice Department does not do that. It does not do investigations based on religion. I saw the document you have.
What did you do about it?
It's appalling. It's appalling. I'm in complete agreement with you. I understand that the FBI has withdrawn it, and it's now looking into how this could ever have happened.
How did it happen?
That's what they're looking into.
How many informants do you have in Catholic churches across America?
I don't know, and I don't believe we have any informants aimed at Catholic churches.
Okay, so that was a great interchange by Senator Hawley, and you may not have even caught it. If you were just listening, you might have caught it. If you were watching, you may or may not have caught it. But hey, here's what happened. So he's asking, why are you putting agents in churches, in Catholic churches? Why are you doing wiretaps on churches? What are you going to get? Like what possibly do you want to know about these priests talking to other priests or parishioners or ordering pizza? Like, I don't know. What are we wiretapping in the Catholic Church? And so Merrick Garland, to his credit, goes, well, no. That was appalling. We would never do that. We would never surveil the Catholic Church because that's ridiculous. Like we can't persecute religion like that. And he is correct, because under the Constitution, you have the freedom of expression of religion, and therefore the government cannot, constitutionally cannot prosecute you just for being a certain religion. That is very true. And he gets there. But here's the piece. If you missed it, it was very quick there. It was very quick. So Hawley says, how many, this is such a good question, how many agents do you have in the Catholic Church? And he goes, I don't know. I mean, none. But it's like, did you hear that? He caught him with a question. He was talking about the order through Richmond office, all this, and he goes, well, how many agents do you have in there? And he's like, well, I don't know. I mean none. Did you hear that? It was so good, because Merrick Garland, I think, caught a little off guard, goes, well, I don't know how many. So there are some. I mean, the easy answer is, how many agents do you have in the Catholic Church? None. Obviously we wouldn't, because as he said in the previous sentence, you don't spy on people just because they're religious. But he goes, well, I don't know how many there are. I mean, there's none in there, but I mean, who knows? It's a nuance here, but I think it's a really important slip up that Attorney General Merrick Garland says, well, whoops. Yeah, I mean, of course there's agents in there, because those religious people, we can't have them just going around willy-nilly, talking about marriage and talking about men and women. We got to get in there and figure out what's going on. And in this interchange, it turned over to Senator Cruz, who is also a fantastic, I was going to say interviewer, but I mean, interrogator might be too strong, whatever. Cruz is just really good about getting to the bottom line questions. And I've brought to you several times at this point that there have been 87 to 100 plus attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers, churches, resource centers for pro-life events. There have been a lot of firebombs, vandalism, broken windows, and threats made. And yet, so far, and I do check this fairly frequently, I believe there's been one or maybe two arrests out of the hundreds of these attacks. That's it. So Senator Cruz is asking Garland about this, and let's listen to what Cruz says on this one.
Why do you send 24 agents in body armor to arrest a sidewalk counselor who happens to be pro-life, but you don't devote resources to prosecute people who are violently firebombing crisis pregnancies.
It is a priority of the department to prosecute and investigate and find the people who are doing those firebombings. They are doing it at night and in secret. So, and we have found one group which we did prosecute.
You found one. How many have there been? How many attacks?
There have been a lot. And if you have any information specifically as to who those people are, we would be glad. We would be glad to have that.
Did you personally authorize 20 agents going to Mr. Houck's house? And he offered to turn himself in through counsel, but you didn't want that. The Department of Justice wanted to make a show of it. Did you personally authorize it? And do you want to apologize to Mrs. Houck and her 7 children for being terrorized?
The decisions about how to do that are made at the level of the FBI agents on scene.
Oh, that was so good. Cruz is so good at that. So, as I mentioned, I set the clip up for his discussion about the different pro-life pregnancy centers, churches, et cetera, that have been attacked by abortionist activists and all these other things. And by the way, some of the abortionist activist groups have literally claimed responsibility on social media for the attacks, and yet they still can't find them. But that's a side issue. Then there's Mark Houck, who I've brought and talked about a bunch of different times. He's a dad of, I thought it was 6, maybe it's 7, a lot of kids, and he was taken at gunpoint by a veritable FBI SWAT team early in the morning for the crime of standing in front of a pregnancy center and kind of protecting his son. Again, you can go back in the archives and listen to that if you want. I gave a lot of information on that before, but what I love about this is Cruz asks Garland, hey, did you authorize this? And he goes, well, I don't know who did this. I mean, I'm not in charge here. Who's in charge here? Wait, aren't you in charge here? Aren't you? Aren't you the Attorney General of the United States of America? Aren't you in charge of the FBI? And like, isn't this your thing? And I love this line too. Cruz says, are you going to apologize to his wife, to his kids for showing up at gunpoint? And by the way, if you missed, and I didn't mention this time, Mr. Houck was acquitted of all charges. He was facing 11 years in prison. 11 years in prison for standing in front of an abortion center. 11 years. And he was acquitted of that. Fantastic. Great news. I brought that to you a couple weeks ago. But he says, Cruz says to Garland, are you going to apologize for this? I mean, like, that was kind of gross and kind of bad that you arrested him at gunpoint in front of his family and his young kids. And as far as I know, no representative of the government has ever apologized to them for that. Yes, sorry, we arrested you wrongly and you've been acquitted. Because that's not how they view it. They clearly view it as you're in the wrong because you're against culture, because our culture says we must sacrifice these babies. You must have the right to choose to live your lifestyle, even if it means the ending of a life of a baby. And that is the value we're going to stand on, and we're going to force you into believing that value. And if you stand up against that value, we're going to take you away and haul you off to jail. You may have gotten away this time, but we'll get you next time. That's the message that we're hearing. And that is the reason that I bring to you that, like, they are trying to destroy the culture. That's really what is going on here. And as truth seekers, truth speakers, we've got to stand up against that. And speaking of speaking, we've got time for one more. And this is this is about speaking and reading. That's kind of the theme that we've hit today, incidentally. So college students, even at Harvard is the place that, you know, it was maybe the top learning institution in America, in the world, perhaps. And now, apparently, the good kids can't read good no more. I don't know what to tell you. So this is a New Yorker article, the end of the English major. And I'm not going to read much of the article. You can go and read it, the end of the English major at the New Yorker. And this I don't know, it hits home for me a little bit because I love reading, I love English, I love grammar and making sure we do these things right. And at Harvard, apparently, they can't read basic English American text. So the Scarlet Letter, like, when did you read the Scarlet Letter? I read the Scarlet Letter. I think it was 8th grade, maybe it was 9th grade. I don't really remember, but I read it. And, you know, at the time I wasn't as in love with English and literature as I am now, but I mean, it was a good read, like, whatever. I don't feel like I particularly struggled reading it in 8th or 9th grade. But now at Harvard, presumably the best college in America, they can't read this. This is a professor at Harvard via the New Yorker article that says, the last time I taught the Scarlet Letter, I discovered my students were really struggling to understand the sentences. Like, I'm reading word for word here, like having trouble identifying the subject and the verb. Their capacities are different, and the 19th century is a long time ago. No, the 19th century is not that long ago. Like, reading English is not, like, we apparently don't teach this anymore. Like, this is what we know. And somehow these students are getting into Harvard, presumably the best school in the country, but cannot actually read sentences. Now, I'm going to read for you a selection from the Scarlet Letter. It was written in 1850 by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So 1850 is not that long ago, right? But apparently this type of language we can no longer understand. I'm going to read this for you. And if you struggle with this and hearing this, I do get that. I do understand that. A lot of people don't read this kind of literature and this kind of book anymore. So I'm not making fun of you. What I am making fun of is the people at Harvard who are supposed to be the smartest people in the country who cannot read this. That's what I'm making fun of. So listen to this. It is a curious subject of observation and inquiry, whether hatred and love be not the same thing. At bottom, each, in its utmost development, supposes a high degree of intimacy and heart knowledge. Each renders one individual dependent for the food of his affections and spiritual life of another. Each leaves the passionate lover or the no less passionate hater forlorn and desolate by the withdrawal of his object. That is the end of the quote from the Scarlet Letter. Now, that was not particularly easy language, but it just meant that hate and love are pretty much the same. But the people at Harvard can't read this anymore. This is functionally actually a really big problem. The people at Harvard need to figure these things out and figure out how to get people in that can actually read. And just for reference, so this, I think Matt Walsh posted this, but this is a letter, and actually on my shelf I have some other Civil War books. But this is a letter of, I believe, a 17-year-old. And this 17-year-old is, or maybe it was an 18-year-old. Anyway, whatever. It was a young kid in the Civil War who was just writing a letter. This is just a person writing a letter in a journal in the Civil War. So just a random kid in the Civil War writes this letter. I'm going to read this for you. Under the dark shade of a towering oak near the Dunker Church lay the lifeless form of a drummer boy, apparently not more than 17 years of age, flaxen hair and eyes of blue and form of delicate mold. As I approached him, I stooped down, and as I did so, I perceived a bloody mark upon his forehead. It showed where the leaden messenger of death had produced the wound that caused his death. His lips were compressed, his eyes half open, a bright smile played upon his countenance. By his side lay his tenor drum, never to be tapped again. I mean, I have chills reading that. It's incredible language, but it's just basic English. That's just basic English that a random young kid soldier in the Civil War wrote. And now we can't write anything like that. We cannot figure this out. I want to talk a little more of this, but what I saw as another article that's connected, I think, is that Columbia is the first Ivy League school. So again, we have Harvard, now we have Columbia, the first Ivy League school that will now not have the SAT or ACT for entrance. They're just eliminating it. You don't have to do the test anymore. So we have people at Harvard who can't read, and now at Columbia, they're just going to remove the SAT, they're going to remove the ACT and bring people in by looking at them and deciding if they want to have them at the college. I don't know. I don't know what the entrance means now, but these tests that are general education tests to test whether you know how to read and do math and other, reading, writing, arithmetic, those tests are gone. We don't need those tests anymore. And now you can just do whatever you want and maybe you'll get into college, though we know that if you look a certain way, you're not going to get into those colleges. I mean, that's the crazy thing. And so another person posted this, and I wanted to share it. This is an examination from 8th grade from, let me see what year this is from here. This is from, I don't have the year. I think it was 1912. Yeah, this is from 1912. So this is an examination from 1912 for 8th grade. Remember, 8th grade. So Harvard can't read. Columbia is not going to do entrance tests anymore, but this is an 8th grade exam to see if students know their stuff. You have things in this exam like, here's some spelling words: exaggerate, conscious, chandelier, words like endeavor. And then you have grammar, like what is a personal pronoun? Decline I. I would wager that some people don't know how to do that, don't even know what I is in forms of a sentence. This is 8th grade. There's some other examples here. I won't go through this whole thing, but I think you get the idea, right? In 8th grade, apparently they were doing way, way harder things than they did at Harvard. Why? Because this culture doesn't want you to succeed. They don't want you to understand speech. They don't want you to understand words. They don't want you to understand how to do things. Why? Because then they can tell you what is right and real and true. And I hate to say it that way, but that is the only way I can see it. This culture, the leadership in it, wants you dumb so that you can't understand what is really going on. And you won't say, hey, wait a minute, what about this? And to come to a Christian perspective, a spiritual perspective, this does have spiritual context. It has spiritual context in that language is really important. Language is the beginning of the life. In the beginning was God. That is Genesis 1. And in the beginning was the Word. That is John 1, referring to Jesus. Jesus is the Word. He's the Word at the beginning, which breathes life into the world through the Word. And in John, it talks about how Jesus is the living Word, and then we have the resurrection, we have new life, we have the kingdom of God coming down in Revelation, and it all has to do with how we speak. Even the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, it's only possible because language between people was shared. As soon as the language was separated, people no longer could accomplish such great heights. And the leaders of this world know that. They know that if we cannot share language, if we cannot share words, if we cannot agree that words even have meaning at all, like what is a woman, what is a man, what is marriage, what is a he, what is a she, we don't know the answer to any of these, and we cannot answer these things. But it makes a difference. If we cannot agree on basic definitions that correspond to reality, we cannot grow as a community. This is just the basis of reality. I'll read this for you from Genesis 11. Here's Genesis 11:5. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower and the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from all over the earth and they stopped building the city. This is why it's called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the earth. It's really important to understand that language is the basis for how our civilization grows, how our community grows. And the good news is, if you haven't made this connection, when Pentecost happens in Acts, when Pentecost happens, the Spirit comes down, God re-releases language. That's part of why tongues are so important in Acts. It's because this language that God separated at Babel, he puts back together so that specifically we can share the gospel, so that we can share the love, the truth of Jesus with everyone, so that there is no hindrance, even language, in between people understanding what is real, what is true, and what is right in the kingdom of God through Jesus Christ, the actual living word, through the power of the Spirit. This is why language matters so much. Without the truth of the beginning of creation through the resurrection of the living word and the new heavens and new earth, with Jesus Christ coming to usher this new heaven and new earth in, believers like you and me need to keep speaking the truth. We have to keep speaking the truth. And maybe especially, we need to keep speaking the truth to a culture that wants to literally destroy everything that connects to reality, from men to women to family to marriage, to the reality that we live in the actual kingdom of God with a physical expression and a spiritual foundation that is real and present. So, all of that said, thank you for participating today. I hope that you not only know this truth, but that you live it out every day. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and I hope that you will keep the faith.